Hello, it's Shelley F Knight, bringing you Positive Changes, a self-kick podcast. So today on the show, we're joined by Maxwell Ivey, who's also known as the Blind Blogger. So big warm welcome to Maxwell.
Well, hi, Shelley. Thanks for having me on your podcast and for welcoming me to your audience.
Bless you. Thank you so much for being here today. You said I can call you Max in case people think I'm a bit casual, but we did speak beforehand.
Yes,
Max,
I did. And I encourage people to call me Max once they've done things to where I would consider them friends. So yeah, more than happy for you to do that.
Lovely. So please do share your story of positive change.
Well, I will share it, but I'll say before I start that my positive change, most of it started because of some negative experiences, and many of my decisions weren't necessarily an active choice, but here I am 12 years later. I grew up in a family of carnival owners, or what y'all would call fun fair operators in the UK, and planned on going into the business when I grew up, and actually was lucky enough to work alongside my dad for about 15 years before he passed away. I also knew that I was going to lose some, if not all of my vision to retinitis pigmentosa. So we found ways for me to be involved in the business, which usually meant helping with the bookings, operating kids' games, pitching in the food wagon. During high school, I went to traditional high school and college, and the vision really was never a problem because I grew up in a supportive family who really never had any time for people to feel sorry for themselves. I went to good schools with helpful teachers who were trained in how to help bring visually impaired people along. And in fact, I was part of a scouting troop for visually impaired boys and one of the few blind Eagle Scouts. So in 2003, my dad passed away, and by 2006 or 7, our carnival was out of business, and I had to figure out what to do next. So I started helping people sell their used rides on the internet at a place called the Midway Marketplace. And I had to learn a whole bunch of new things in order to run that website. This was before WordPress, Wi-Fi, or Facebook. And so I had to even learn how to hand code HTML as part of the process of becoming an online business owner. I did that, and I still do it. But a few years ago, people said, Max, the way you take on all these challenges and just find a way to accomplish things is very inspiring. We want you to share more of your experiences. And so I finally relented and agreed that I am inspirational and started a second website as the Blind Blogger, which is what people had been calling me online for a couple of years before then. So it was just a natural fit to go by that name. As a result of sharing my experiences, I've written 3 books so far, with the 4th due in July. I have a blog and a podcast called What's Your Excuse? I've been on over 200 podcasts. I help other creative entrepreneurs get exposure by connecting them with hosts of shows so they can share their stories, like I'm getting the opportunity to do today. And other than the fact that I love to sing and often sing it on my podcast or when I give public talks, I think that's pretty much all of it.
You're on YouTube as well, aren't you? Because I've seen you on YouTube.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah. I only have 171 subscribers, but yes, I'm over there.
That's brilliant. So have you always been of a positive mindset, Max?
I think I probably have. Obviously, some of those years I wouldn't have really been aware enough to think about it at the time. But I think for me, growing up in a family of carnival owners where nobody really cares about you or your situation, all they want to know is on Thursday or Friday night, can they ride the Ferris wheel and buy a cotton candy and maybe win a teddy bear? So you learn from an early age that there are solutions, and you better figure out how to find them, and you better find them now. So I think that went into it. Plus, my dad was just one of those people who, even in the worst of times, he would find something to laugh about. He would tell you a story or a joke. And in fact, one of the really hard things about being still in the business after he died was there wasn't anybody other than me to find the positives in our family.
So it all came down to you.
Yes, yes. When my dad was gone, it was me and my mom and my younger brother, Patrick. I I pretty much had to work really hard at staying positive for everybody, and that just didn't work.
Bless you. So you've had quite a lot of loss. So your dad died, but then you've had the loss of vision as well. Has that changed you and your coping strategies at all?
I think it is another place where it helped me. I think my blindness is an advantage for two reasons. One, I didn't lose it all at once. I lost it gradually. So over the course of 7 or 8 years, I went from having perfect vision to having to use a white cane and learn Braille. So I love to read, and I went from reading, regular type and being able to read it in dim light to having to have bright light to having to have large type and eventually using a closed circuit monitor and then switching to audio and to Braille. So as my vision was constantly changing, I was constantly having to adapt to a new level of vision and a new way of doing things. And so I think that really helped me. The other thing that I think it really helps me nowadays is when people grow up, most people, they have this idea that they're supposed to be able to do everything themselves, that asking for help is a sign of weakness and asking for opportunities is a sign of ego. But when I grew up, everybody, my teachers, my family, the Scoutmaster were always telling me, never be afraid to ask because people will want to help you. In fact, people generally want to help other people. But if you don't ask and you try to do this on your own with the lack of vision and being at a little bit of a disadvantage, it's going to make things harder for you, less enjoyable. It's going to take you longer to get there. And so I feel like this is one area where I'm sure you will agree with me. The world would be a lot better off if more people would think about interdependence instead of independence and think about doing things as a collective, a community, bringing other people along for the journey or for their support so that you can actually accomplish what you want.
Absolutely. That'd be far more beautiful. I think we're so afraid to ask for help. And even when we do ask for help, we don't always accept it. When actually everyone likes to have a purpose. Everyone likes to feel that they've got, something they could offer to someone else. So yeah, I love that, like a collectiveness would be absolutely wonderful, Max.
Right. And I like to make sure I share this expression because I think it helps a lot of people understand the whole idea of asking for help. It's important that you put the focus on the other person and take it off of yourself. And I tell people, when you refuse to ask, you rob the other person of the joy they would have received from helping you.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, yes. Just tell us that again, Max. That's beautiful.
It's funny. I was going to say it twice. I usually do, and I didn't today. But then you said, Max. So I love how we're in tune there. I'm getting chills, shall we? I mean, so yes, when you refuse to ask, you rob the other person of the joy they would have received from helping you.
I just think that's so beautiful, and it's so true. I mean, I don't know what it is about us, but we don't ask for help. We don't ask for opinions, and we get plenty of that. But when we actually ask for help, or we don't ask for help, but then I just could make life so much easier for everyone, couldn't it?
Right. And then of course I want to talk a little bit about the PhD version of asking for help. That's when other people offer help to you, but you don't remember asking them for it. And that's even more difficult because then the ego kicks in and you're like, hey, who the heck do they think they are that they believe I need their help? I mean, what's wrong with these people? And I'm right. You're laughing at me, so I know I'm right.
Yeah.
So that's where I tell people you asked, you just didn't ask. Maybe you didn't ask verbally or directly because people think if they're not sending an email or calling on the phone or leaving a text message that they didn't ask, but they're forgetting about the power of meditation, of prayer, of positive thought. They're also forgetting about the fact that we are more transparent to certain people than we believe we are. So there are people who know us, whether that be online or in person, they know us well enough that when they see us on social media, they will notice things about us that go, I think that they're struggling with this. I'm going to reach out to them and offer to help them. And one of my favorite examples was in my early days as a blogger. I didn't know this because I couldn't see my own screen, but my images I would add to my posts were ending up in the middle of the text and making it difficult for people to read my posts. And of course, you know how it is online. When people have any difficulty at all, they go to the next person's website. So it was obvious to my friend Lorraine regularly that I needed some help. And she reached out to me and said, you probably don't know if this is happening, and so we had a great conversation. She's become one of my closest friends of her being willing to do that. But I often wonder if it had been something different, and if it had been a sighted person she had offered to help to, would she have gotten the same response? So I definitely think there are times when my lack of vision is definitely an advantage, if not even a superpower, as people like to refer to it online nowadays.
I think you're a superhero. I love that. So in your day-to-day routine, do you use any special tools or techniques or a mindset so you keep creating positive changes?
I think my number one thing that I do, well, there's three things that I do. One is I decide to find solutions instead of making excuses. And I will admit that there have been times that I've found myself making excuses, and either I realized it or a friend called me out on it, and I've had to correct it. I'm not perfect, don't claim to be, never will be. So deciding is the important part, that you have to be aware and looking for solutions as opposed to making excuses. The second thing is we've already talked about asking for help. The third thing is you have to be determined to find the positive in every aspect of your life. There are good things out there, either people you've met or will meet, events, experiences, and they're all around us. We see them, but we don't always recognize them, appreciate them, or give gratitude for them. So you have to decide. You have to make it an actual effort in the beginning. I tell people I'm good at this after years because I've fell on my backside enough times, and I've gotten a lot of practice in finding the positive in bad situations. But most people, especially in the beginning, they will have to go, okay, what happened today? And some may even have to take out a piece of paper and make a list of things until they start to get better at it. With me, like I say, I've got a lot of practice, and I like to tell people that being positive, staying positive is difficult. It's work, but it's just like finding anything else. You decide it's there, and then you look for it until you find it. So if you lose your keys, your TV remote, or your smartphone, you know it's somewhere. You have a general idea where it is, and you're going to keep looking until you find it. You may have a mess of a living room when you're through, but sooner or later, and if you have to, you'll ask the family to come in and help you look for it. Sooner or later, though, you will find it. But why did you find it? Because you decided it was there and you kept looking. And that's the way it is with being positive.
I really like that. That's brilliant. So there's people out there saying they're listening, and you're so positive, and you've got this sprinkle of humor as well, but they're sitting there listening to us and they're thinking, yeah, I might make a positive change. I think they probably will after the key analogy. But can you tell people, why is it so important to create these positive changes in your life?
Well, the positive changes that you make in your life, they will affect other aspects of your life, your mental health, your physical health. Think about the fact that by refusing to even try, you may be raising your heart rate, making yourself more at risk for a stroke or mental illness. You could cause yourself to have poor sleep. The negative or lack of a fully positive attitude leads to, poor food choices, which affects your diet, your exercise routine, and weight maintenance or weight loss. Your attitude, how you see the world and how you see yourself in it, is pretty much tied to everything that you do. So it is really important that we make these positive changes, but they don't have to be big, huge changes. They can be very small ones. I wrote in my book, It's Not the Cookie, It's the Bag, that for somebody who hasn't exercised in years, even putting on their shoes and tying up the laces every morning could be a positive change. We all think too much of the big successes, the parties we're going to have when we're that skinny, handsome, sexy person that we see in the magazines or on the internet. But they all started with making small, very tiny positive changes. And in fact, in my professional life, my most important change was filing for a domain name as the Midway Marketplace. It cost me $20-something, and I had to get somebody to help me do it. But that led to so many other things, because every time I did something that was a small change, I learned more about myself, I became more confident in myself, and I was ready for bigger positive changes.
And that is so important. And that's what I try and do in my work. It's like, it's nothing like, if you're unhappy in life, it is overwhelming. But sometimes it's just starting small. Like if you don't like your body, just change like maybe how you have breakfast. If you don't like your relationship, start with yourself, love yourself more. Something, just the small changes. And it's exactly that. Going back to your book, so I did have a little chuckle to myself. It's not the cookie, it's the bag. That's your title.
Yes, that's the second book about my transition as far as my physical well-being. It talks about the health emergency where I was almost kicked out of a motel for peeing on their mattresses, to getting with a primary care physician, to being treated for sleep apnea, having gastric surgery, and changing my lifestyle to where the gastric surgery would actually take effect and be successful, because without changing your lifestyle, gastric surgery only works in about 40 to 50% of cases. And you do have to change the way you look at yourself, the way you look at the world and food. And the biggest problem for me, and I've been told it's the biggest problem for a lot of other people, is when you lose the weight and you've had it off for a while and people start to tell you how good you look, and you're like, I'm not that person. It took me a long time to where I can actually say the words handsome, sexy, charismatic, powerful, professional. I could say those words about myself now, and not only say them, but believe them. And that's the biggest transition that I had to make as part of that book and part of my life.
So you've written 3 books, 4th one in progress. Have the others got brilliant titles as well?
I don't know about brilliant. Although I understand that in the US and the UK, we have different definitions of the word. Brilliant here is more about actual, intellectual brilliance. But brilliant there is just an overall feeling of good work, if I understand it correctly. So
yeah, just greatness.
Yes. So the first one is called "It's Leading You Out of the Darkness into the Light: A Blind Man's Inspirational Guide to Success." The last one is called "The Blind Blogger's New York City Adventures: How You Can Make Your Dreams Come True." And the fourth one is going to be a continuation of my travels, except this time it will be my first experiences as an author, promoting myself by doing book signings and public speaking, and the good things that happened, the mistakes, the disasters, the solutions, and how it started, how it all came together, and the way I was able to actually make this thing happen, to travel cross country solo for over 6 weeks without a whole lot of money, without a whole lot of skills or talent, other than the fact that I enjoy to write and people think I'm a really good storyteller. And I think it's a very good book. My author's been working on the board, but she's like, Max, I think what we need to go with here is ask people, what if you were about to take a trip, across country, or even all the way to the other side of your state, and you were thinking about all these problems that might occur. Then what would happen if you were also, visually impaired, thinking about taking such a trip? Would you do it? How would you do it? And so that's kind of the vibe that the book has. And I don't guess you'd call the title brilliant, although it's going to have great artwork.
Bless you. Max, you've been an absolute delight. So you're the blind blogger and you've got your website, but you've got more. You've got a Facebook group and Instagram as the blind blogger. And then as Maxwell Ivey, you've got LinkedIn, Twitter, Pinterest, and YouTube. How else? That must be everything, surely.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much everything. The most important thing is the blindblogger.net, because that's where they can find the latest blog post, and that's where the podcast episodes will show up. The only other thing that I would mention is they can ask Alexa or Google to play the Blind Blogger, or ask for the Blind Blogger. they can do the same thing for my podcast. You can just say, Google, ask for what's your excuse, or ask for the what's your excuse showing, and they'll get the podcast episodes. And they can also find the video on Roku at Knob TV.
Fabulous. You have made me chuckle so much. Thank you so much, Max. I've absolutely loved it. Thank you for sharing your positive changes, your humor, everything.
Well, thank you for being such a great host and for being a good audience, because making people laugh has always been something I do. And if people don't laugh, then I know I'm not having a good show or conversation if the other person doesn't laugh. So thank you. And also, I know that that transitioning from nursing to podcasting, you are really enjoying what you're doing. But I also understand this takes a lot of time and effort and a fair amount of money. So I want you to know how much I appreciate you and others like you who give me the opportunity to share my stories.
Oh, Max, you are one beautiful soul. Thank you for connecting with me.
You're welcome. Thank you too.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please ensure you subscribe and do leave a positive review. If you would like to create your own positive changes, head on over to shelleyfknight.com and you can buy yourself a copy of Positive Changes, a self-cookbook. If you want some positivity until the next show, come join us over on Facebook. That's Shelley F. Knight, Life Goes On. So I've been Shelley F. Knight, and as always, you've been amazing.